Hello, Browns fans. Thank you for sharing 20 minutes of your time with me, the Village Elliot. The Oracle speaks on why the Browns can be tied for last place and yet be the sixth playoff seed in the American Football Conference. Not even the last playoff seed. The Cincinnati Bengals are the last seed. The Browns beat the Bengals and are the number 6 seed. That's absolutely right. The universe is out of balance. How can this be? All four teams in the AFC North are currently seeded for the playoffs. And I know it's too early to talk about playoffs, playoffs, playoffs. Yes, but the Browns, in other words, are the sixth ranked team in the AFC by virtue of their one-loss record. They have beaten the Cincinnati Bengals already. Baltimore is the division leader, and we play Baltimore this week. And the Pittsburgh Steelers have already beaten the Cleveland Browns, so they are the number 5 playoff seed, and the Browns are 6. Now, the New York Jets had a chance to make it a 4-way tie with in terms of the one-loss record, but they kind of fell flat on their faces and got pummeled by the used to be San Diego Chargers, now the Los Angeles Chargers. To me, they're still the San Diego Chargers. Don't tell anybody that. You're not supposed to say that. But anyway, the Los Angeles Chargers triumphed over New York. Everybody in New York is mad, as they always are, after every loss. And this is just a question about who to fire, who their next quarterback is going to be. I think the quarterback is actually not their problem. They have deep offensive problems. They allowed 8 sacks. My gosh, poor New York Jets. They don't know what their problem is. But anyway, so here are the Browns. They have a chance to do some damage in the division by knocking off Baltimore next week. There are some interesting trends, however, from the Arizona game, now that the snap counts have been calculated. I'd like to talk to you about that. There are some problems, or let's say trends, with the Stefanski offense that I'd like to talk to you about. Not everything is happy when even though they scored 27 points against Arizona, there are some kind of weird trends, and they're snap count related. First of all, the Browns only have one wide receiver that Deshaun Watson is apparently comfortable with. Now, we got rid of Donovan Peoples-Jones because he wasn't catching the football, right? Okay, so it must be Donovan Peoples-Jones can't get open. Something's wrong with Donovan Peoples-Jones. Has he become a fat cat in his old age, or what is the problem with Donovan Peoples-Jones? Well, let's get rid of him. We're going to get a number 6 draft choice in 2025, which is ridiculous because probably everybody in the front office will be fired by then. But anyway, that's what they got. That's the best that they could do. I'm very hopeful of them to think that they'll survive till 2025. Okay, so who replaced him? Let's take a look at the snap counts and make that judgment. First of all, their number 1 guy, the incredible superstar, Amari Cooper, has been lights out against everybody. No matter who they've thrown at Amari Cooper, he's still been able to catch the football. I was very surprised that he had a very good game against Seattle, despite going against who Pro Football Focus claimed was the number 1 defensive back, cornerback in the NFL. And he still was able to have a good game against Seattle. But anyway, the Cleveland Browns had 73 snaps on offense last Sunday, and that was against Arizona, of course. And Amari Cooper had 58. That's 79% of the offensive snaps. Amari Cooper was on the field. The next wide receiver was Cedric Tillman. He was on the field for 54 snaps, or 74%. So almost as often as Amari Cooper, Cedric Tillman was on the field. Amari Cooper was targeted 5 times, had 5 receptions for 139 yards, an incredible game, 27.5 yards per catch. Just an outstanding game for Amari Cooper. 5 targets in that time. However, their number 2 wide receiver, how many targets do you think he had? Well, if you guessed 1, that's exactly right. He was targeted 1 time, had 1 reception for 3 yards. I mean, doesn't that sound like Donovan Peoples-Jones' stat line? 1 target, 1 reception, 3 yards, even though he was on the field for the same length of time as Amari Cooper. It's a small data sample to be sure, but Cedric Tillman is supposed to be the number 2 receiver. And in a blowout game where they had 27 points, they couldn't find it in their hearts to target Cedric Tillman any more than 1 time. And I just think that that's out of balance, where the number 1 guy gets 5 times as many targets as the number 2 guy. I hope they get that straightened out by the time that they face Baltimore. Otherwise, I think Baltimore might find a way to double cover Cooper, find some way to slow him down. So, yeah, that was kind of crazy. Who were the other guys that got targeted? Well, Jerome Ford was targeted 7 times. That actually led the team in targets. He's a running back, of course. He caught 5 balls for 33 yards. That's, not bad production for a running back. We were concerned about Jerome Ford a little bit because he didn't do that in college, but he's been really good at catching the ball out of the backfield. So good for him. They also threw the ball 6 times to David Njoku, the tight end. He had 4 grabs for 26 yards. That's really very nice production from the tight end. Elijah Moore was 2 targets and 2 catches, 14 yards. It's, again, a little bit, let's say, shallow production for Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore was on the field 45 snaps, which is 62% of the snaps. And by the way, I didn't mention that David Njoku was on the field for 56 snaps, which is about the same. He was number 2 among receiver targets behind Cooper. So that's pretty good for a tight end. His production has been outstanding all season long, despite the fact that he had severe burns from an accident, at I guess a high-powered cookout, or he did something wrong and got caught in a explosion of sorts and wound up with severe burns on his arms and face. Anyway, he's been playing in great pain, and it's been a very difficult season for him, but he has continued to play, continued to be outstanding, continued to be criticized in print by sports writers for no good reason, by the way. He's really been doing an outstanding job, has been for years and years. People criticize that he gets paid too much money, but if you look at his salary cap hit, it is not very high at all this season. He's way down on the list among tight ends. So I don't think that's fair at all. All right. Then other running backs, Pierre Strong also was 1 for 1, although his reception was for negative yardage. That's not so great. And Marquise Goodwin, the other wide receiver, was targeted twice, did not come up with any grabs, and his catch percentage has been pretty low this year. Kareem Hunt had 1 target, did not come up with a football. Kareem, of course, is well established as a receiver out of the backfield. He's very good. I'm not concerned about Kareem. And let's talk about the rushing game. The rushing game has really done very, very well in terms of getting yards in the absence of Nick Chubb. They've added Pierre Strong. That's helped them to some extent. He was 3 for 9. Not bad, but he's, at least a presence in case Ford or Hunt go down. They have a backup. Ford was better in the first half. Both running backs were better in the first half. They did not have great statistics. Ford overall was 20 attempts, 64 yards. That's a 2.2 yards per carry average. Kareem Hunt was not even, it was a little bit better, 14 attempts, 38 yards, 2.7 yards per carry. Deshaun Watson brought the team average up a little bit by going 3 attempts, 22 yards. That's 7.3 yards per attempt. So overall, they were 40 attempts, 113 yards, and 2.8 yards per carry. Now, you can say, rightfully so, that the Browns used the run a lot in the second half, even though Arizona knew it was coming. And the reason is that they had an impressive lead, and they just were not of the mind that they were going to risk an interception for no reason. All that's true. I will point out that back in the day, Nick Chubb used to go in that situation and just eat people alive in the closer role. But we don't have Nick Chubb, so they ran the ball, didn't make very many yards, and they punted a lot, and that's probably okay. All right, so let me also make another point, something that's been overlooked by the national media. We have a fullback. The Cleveland Browns have a fullback, and even the stat services haven't realized that we have a fullback. His name is Nick Harris. Nick Harris is listed as a center, and he has played some center, a few snaps when Ethan Posick was injured or shaken up, I should say, for a few snaps. He went in and played center. So he does have a role as a backup center, but most of his snaps have been as a fullback. He played 18 snaps against Arizona, and I believe that all of them have been as a fullback, or you could argue that, well, he lined up as an H-back on this snap, or, as a extra tight end, or tackle eligible, whatever. But he's been in that role as an eligible position player most of the season, and usually as a fullback. And he's been very effective at blowing open holes in the other team's line that the running backs can run through. And that's why the running backs have been as effective as they are, because Nick Harris opens up holes. He weighs 290 some pounds, and he's able to run into the line and make a hole that anybody can see, and the running back just runs through the hole. That's partially, I think you could say, an indictment that they'd rather have a fullback instead of an extra wide receiver or an extra tight end. It does help the running game. The Browns have rushed the ball more often than they did when they had Nick Chubb. They've had to have more carries in order to get yards on the ground. But nevertheless, that's what they've got. They've got a fullback that they've used like in the old days, and it's worked for them. It's helped them to gain yards on the ground. It's classic Stefanski. A lot of times they line up with 2 tight ends and a fullback, and then they run the ball, and then the big kids just push the defense around, and that's how they gain yards. Overall, the offense is not nearly as effective as the defense. One of the criticisms that I had for Stefanski, and I hope that this will be regarded as constructive criticism, I like Stefanski overall as a coach, is that he, I believe, has to learn to transition himself from being that offensive-minded coach to realizing that he has a defensive juggernaut and that his offense is inconsistent. And what I mean by that is that early in the game, for example, he was faced with a situation where he had an opportunity to bring in Dustin Hopkins to kick a field goal that was, I forget what the distance was, but it was in, I think, the high 40s, like 47 or 48 yards or something like that. And rather than go for that field goal, he decided that he needed to go for it on 4th down. And I feel that that was the wrong mentality, that when you have a great defensive team, you should be prepared to win that game by field goals. You should be willing to count on your team to hold a lead of 3 points. And so I felt in that instance, the Cleveland Browns need to be willing to accept a 3-point lead rather than feel like they need to score a whole bunch of points to beat Arizona and to beat a rookie quarterback making his first start, Clayton Tune. I felt we gave Clayton Tune way too much respect. I thought that they should have kicked the field goal. And I realize that contradicts some of what I have said in the past, that normally on the average, you score more points by going for it on fourth down. That's true. But this is a situation where the Browns do not have a particularly strong offense, but they do have a very, very strong defense. And so I think you need to go against the trends that you've sort of grown up with as an offensive coordinator. It's a very different mindset with this team, where you have one of the top defensive teams in the NFL, and you're going against a team that had a rookie quarterback and is not an offensive juggernaut by any means. Now, a difficult question that we have to answer going forward, actually, we don't have to answer, but we're pretending that we're Kevin Stefanski, is what kind of strategy do you employ against the Baltimore Ravens? And by the way, the Baltimore Ravens have totally exceeded my expectations. I felt all along in the offseason that there was a disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff, where the front office has been busy investing in wide receivers. Namely, Odell Beckham Jr. was one of their big free agent acquisitions. They also drafted Zay Flowers in the first round. They also had first-round draft choices in the past few drafts, and they've invested draft picks, high draft picks, in wide receivers for like the past 3 or 4 years. And I felt that they were trying to convert Lamar Jackson, who I regard as the greatest dual threat quarterback in the history of the NFL. And they're trying to convert him into a pocket passer, which I don't think is a really good strategy. I think what he does best is pass against an 8-man front, where he keeps the threat of running for a long gain alive. And I think that they were doing great with 2 tight ends, with a fullback. They have a 310-pound fullback that they like to run at you. And I thought that was working very well. And I believe that Coach John Harbaugh continues to coach his team with a run-first mentality. And nevertheless, they've been very effective on offense, despite the fact that Harbaugh's coaching style runs contrary to what the general manager has provided him in terms of personnel. So that's an interesting conflict. I do think that the Browns will have to, they're the underdogs, and I think that they will have to take some chances on offense in order to win. So the strategy that they employ in order to beat Baltimore on offense may be different than what they should have employed against Arizona. Of course, it's very hard to criticize Coach Stefanski when they won 27-0. So I hope you'll appreciate the fact that I'm not trying to criticize him when he's down. Certainly, I'm criticizing him when he was brilliantly successful. But I do feel, the strategy, the analytics generally favor not taking chances against a team that has a poor offense. But when a team has a brilliant offense like Baltimore, that your offensive strategy might be a little bit more wide open. I want to see the Browns use their secondary wide receivers more than they did against Arizona. There might be an opportunity to launch a trick play or two that we didn't see against Arizona. And I think that there might be some fourth down calls that I won't criticize even if they don't work. I think that you probably do need to score some points against Baltimore in order to win. I think Lamar Jackson is going to be hard to stop. I also will point out that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I think, was the spy backer that we're going to use. He replaces Joe Schobert. That used to be horrible. Joe Schobert was a 4-7 linebacker going against Lamar Jackson, who's like a 4-4 guy, and it was like he had cement overshoes. Joe Schobert, even though he's a great tackler, I think he led the NFL in tackles one year, but he could not keep up with Lamar Jackson. It was horrible. But the first thing I thought of when they announced that they moved up to take Owusu-Koramoah was Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. That's why he was drafted, or one of the big reasons, the big motivations was to compete against the Baltimore Ravens. This is a big game, and I believe that we're going to see Owusu-Koramoah. I don't want to say that he's going to be a great superstar. I don't want to predict that, but I believe that we're going to see him utilized against Lamar Jackson in a special way this game. So that's what I've got to say. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. And man, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to pause for our break. Well, hopefully John will just interrupt the show in the middle, insert some commercials, and hopefully it won't have interrupted the flow of the broadcast too much. So anyway, have a great day and go Browns, everyone.